Chapters 340 to 341. Ray let go of Tayuya's shoulder and walked around the sofa before unceremoniously flopping onto the armchair opposite to it. He reached forward and tapped the edge of the table in between him and the girls, causing small puffs of smoke to erupt and quickly dissipate as various foods appeared on the table. "Go on." Ray smiled when he noticed the hungry and salivating looks the girls were throwing at the food. "Dig in. It was prepared for you." Tayuya and Gorin wanted to do nothing more than to obey this order, but their upbringing stopped them from jumping at the deliciously smelling food. They looked at each other, wary of any drug or poison that might be present in the food. Ray noticed their gazes and sighed. He leaned forward and started filling his plate, lifting his eyebrow at the two women who widened their eyes in bewilderment. "What? Do you think we poisoned the food? Bah! As if we needed to do that." He rolled his eyes. The two girls slightly flushed as they realized it was the truth and started slowly filling up their own plates while being still very cautious. Ray inwardly smiled at the sight and waited until both girls took a bite before starting to speak again. "Well, I definitely did not poison the food. No clue about the chef, though. She likes putting aphrodisiacs in the food." He carelessly shrugged, causing both Tayuya and Gorin to do a spit take. "Meh, my poison immunity is bound to save me." Two unamused glares landed on him, but Ray just returned a happily clueless eye smile to them, now realizing why Kakashi liked to do this. It was fun. Ray partook in the food without a care in the world, while the two disgruntled kunoichis watched, unsure if they should risk it and also dig in. They were quite hungry, though. Kirigakure's cells did not have good room service. The sight of various delicacies in front of them was really, really tempting. Ah, fuck it! In the end, it was Tayuya who broke first and started eating. Aphrodisiacs or not, she decided it doesn't matter. Gorin watched in bewilderment as the younger kunoichi ate with gusto what their host clearly proclaimed a probably drugged food. Tayuya noticed and furrowed her eyebrows. "What?" she asked with a full mouth. "If they want to forcefully fuck us, they don't need to drug our food. We are at his mercy." She offhandedly pointed at Ray, who was content watching the drama with a small amused smile stretching on his lips. Gorin's stomach rumbled, and she had to gulp down her saliva. She was also quite hungry. Deciding that Tayuya had a point, she also started slowly eating. That's when Tayuya smirked. "Plus, I don't have a bloodline. If they are going to breed someone, it will be you, Miss Crystal," she mirthfully added, causing Gorin, who had her cheeks stuffed, to grimace. Needless to say, her appetite was dealt a critical hit. "You are quite the crass individual, aren't you, Pinky?" Ray jovially intervened, not wanting the two women to start bickering again. "Huh? Who is Pinky, you bastard?" Tayuya burst out on instinct, only to realize what she did at the end of her sentence, causing her voice to hitch. She looked at Ray with a deer-in-headlights expression. "Shit! I got too relaxed and forgot to take care what I say." Tayuya inwardly panicked. Ray clearly saw her plight and decided to alleviate her worries. "Such a pity. You are quite the beauty, you know. To think your mouth would be so dirty. I don't dig it," he mournfully stated with a sad head shake, causing Tayuya's irritation to rise while she also flushed a deep red. Even Gorin forgot herself and cracked a smile at that, earning herself a punch to her shoulder from the embarrassed Tayuya when she noticed. "But you are correct. It is Miss Crystal we would breed," Ray seriously said in a matter-of-fact tone, causing Gorin's head to snap in his direction. Gorin suddenly started to feel weaker than usual, and her head slightly spun. Her eyes widened in horror as she realized she was drugged. She desperately tried to fight whatever was in her body by increasing the circulation of her chakra, while staring in fright at Ray, who returned her stare in an even and emotionless manner, pressuring her with a simple look. "If we were actually interested in such a practice." He switched back into his playful tone and shit-eating, teasing grin when he deemed Gurren sufficiently cowed. Alas, your DNA and blood were already taken when you were unconscious, and with time, we will be able to replicate your bloodline without any need for violating you. Who do you take us for? Otto? Ray couldn't help but make a small, scathing comment at Gurren's village, causing the woman to avert her gaze with the knowledge she would not win a verbal fight about this topic. Psychological warfare? Tayuya slightly narrowed her eyes in worry, hiding the gesture by leaning her head forward and letting her hair cover her face. He is making Gurren realize the bad parts of Sound Village based on her reaction to my upbringing, huh? I will have to be extra careful around this one. She felt quite uneasy. He totally got her with his banter earlier. She got too relaxed around him. That was so out of character for her, it shook Tayuya at her core. Ray didn't miss this subtle gesture of Tayuya. He was certainly surprised at the girl. I might have said I don't dig this, but damn. He was extremely glad for his trained poker face. It wasn't about Tayuya's personality or looks. No, Ray was attracted by something else. She can level-headedly analyze the situation and is keeping up with my mind games. No wonder she could fight Shikamaru. Should I? A mischievous thought suddenly entered his mind. Then again, he smirked and looked straight at Tayuya. She didn't like the slight widening of his smirk as his eyes landed on her. We found out you have Uzumaki blood in your veins. Good for you, eh? Kumo would be interested. Gah. Thanks, Tayuya snarkily replied, but inwardly she was repeating, fuck, as she realized why she seemed so important to Lord Orochimaru. It might not have seemed like it, but Jirubu, Kidomaru, Ukon, and Sakon all had some special biology or bloodline, only she had no idea how she fell into the same category as them. And just like that, he erased any idea of escape from my mind. Tayuya inwardly winced. Yeah, the man might have pointed out Kumo, who was known for seeking female Uzumakis for breeding purposes, and their practices were quite brutal. But Tayuya knew his words really meant Lord Orochimaru. Previously, she thought she had no value other than her strength. Now that she was informed of her apparent bloodline, she understood Orochimaru would hunt her down to the end of the world. The Uzumaki were rare, after all. So that's why I had more experiments done on me than the others in the Sound 4. They were trying to awaken a bloodline ability in me. Who is this we? Tayuya resignedly asked, deciding now was not the time for thinking about her fucked-up future prospects. She had to get information about her captors and find out if she could be offered protection for servitude, before she would be fine if they treated her even slightly better than Orochimaru. Now? Now she wouldn't mind being treated worse than that if it meant not getting on Orochimaru's dissection table. Traitors died in Oto, but traitors with bloodlines? Now that was a completely different can of worms. Tayuya shuddered, thinking about what suffering would Orochimaru unleash on her if she was ever captured by his people. Oh, right! I forgot! Ray fakely bullshitted before exclaiming, Welcome to the village hidden on the other side! He waited for an outburst of surprise, but when he received only silence, his brows furrowed. Eh? No applause? You are not a funny audience, you know that? One would think Orochimaru taught you how to be proper grunts, he said in mock disapproval. The women, getting used to Ray's antics, ignored his words and looked at each other in confusion. But no such village exists, Gurren confusedly stated. She knew every single ninja village in the elemental nations, and this one was not among them. Tayuya, at whom the question was aimed, just nodded in agreement. Well, I did say we are a hidden village, didn't I? Ray gave Gurren a meaningful look that made her blush. Wouldn't be much of a secret if every dick, prick, and Gurren knew about our location and existence now, would it? And just like that, her blush was gone, changed for a heated glare. Tayuya involuntarily smiled at that. What will happen to us now? The mood was certainly lightened thanks to Ray's antics, and she was grateful for that. It was still annoying how easily it made her drop her guard, though. Ray ponderingly hummed. It's simple, really. You can either join our village and serve, or... He leaned forward, creating suspense. A threat, huh? Tayuya thought, wondering what their fate would be if they refused. You can leave. Ray finished with a shrug, making use of his leaning forward to snatch a glass of orange juice from the table. After a moment of stupefied silence, it was the brunette who got out of her shock first. You would let us go? Just like that? Gurren incredulously asked, a bit of hope seeping into her mind. She had to inform Lord Orochimaru about this village that was obviously connected to Kirigakure. If they were stupid enough to let her walk free, that is. Yeah, sure. Doors are there. Ray pointed behind them, causing both women to turn around. And if we decide to walk away, nobody will try to detain us? Tayuya asked, not believing in such an obvious crap even for a second. Yup. Pinky promise, Pinky. Ray nodded, quipping a joke and getting the look from Tayuya. Nobody will neither hinder nor aid your escape. Gurren instantly stood up and walked towards the door, not even interested in what Ray had to offer them. Even if he lied, then she had nothing to lose. If he was telling the truth, however, she wasn't about to waste any more of her time. She flung the door open only to freeze in her tracks as her jaw dropped to the floor, unable to believe her eyes. Gurren did hear the unhurried footsteps resounding behind her, and only idly registered as Tayuya walked next to her with the same utterly bewildered expression of disbelief, but she was in too much shock to really care. Oya? I failed to mention this is the village on the other side of the moon? Oh well, now you know. Ray's playful voice resounded from behind the two sound kunoichis as he snickered. Both Gurren and Tayuya realized that there was no running away for them as the sight of a massive blue planet surrounded by a dark void of the universe greeted them. Orochimaru looked at the dissolving six-armed body that ran through all the guards and barged into his laboratory before slumping onto the ground with a desperate and groaning "Oroch!" and promptly died. Frankly, it was fascinating to watch the unknown poison corrode the body, changing even bones to a goo right in front of his eyes. Unfortunately, the two guards chasing Kidomaru entered the laboratory right when Orochimaru's momentary engrossment with the never-before-seen poison just ended, and he realized the corpse indeed had 6 arms, and he knew only one person with such physical disfiguration. Lord Orochimaru, one of the two guards exclaimed and straightened. Sweat suddenly started rolling down his back. They let an intruder reach Lord Orochimaru's laboratory. That was definitely not good. Riki-kun, Orochimaru impassively stated, looking straight at the 6-armed corpse. That is Kidomaru, right? The guard, Riki, was very reluctant to answer. Something in Lord Orochimaru's casual tone told him to keep quiet. Fortunately for him, his partner was a new guy and a very eager one. Yes, Lord Orochimaru! That is Kidomaru-sama! The boy eagerly said. And Riki didn't even notice when Orochimaru lashed out, but the boy's head rolled off his shoulders the second he finished speaking. I see. Orochimaru nodded, his lips twitching downward as the newbie's head hit the ground with a wet thud before his body also gently swayed as gravity claimed it. Orochimaru looked at Riki, who was trying his best to ignore the fresh corpse next to him while wondering if he would be next. Take care of the corpses. I need to send somebody to scout the situation in the land of water. Orochimaru was barely keeping calm. Kidomaru and the Sound Four were essential for his upcoming plan. They were one of his best. He spent a lot of time making sure they were useful, and now Kidomaru was dead. It was a heavy blow since Orochimaru did not have anyone capable of taking his place for the barrier formation. I hope Guren and others got away safely." He frowned, not understanding what could have happened. It was a B-rank assassination mission, and he sent 4 low to mid A-rank ninjas and 1 high A-rank kunoichi. Frankly, this was supposed to be a breeze for them. He only sent such an overkill of a team for the mission to please Gato while showing the midget to not screw with him, to show him there would be no backstabbing from his side involved anytime soon or else. That said, he did train his ninjas to retreat rather than die. Orochimaru wasn't sure Kidomaru was the only loss, but he was certain that not all of his investments died. "I have to find out what happened," he thought as he left the laboratory, leaving the shuddering Ricky behind to clean the mess. "I have survived." Ricky let out a relieved breath, only now noticing how tense he was. He decided to take a 2-minute-long pause so he could properly catch his breath. After he at least somewhat calmed down, Ricky looked at the corpse of his colleague. Unlucky bastard. This was his first day on guard duty. He helplessly shook his head. Well, better him than me. And shrugged. Turning his gaze towards the humanoid goo nearby, Ricky frowned. "And I have to clean this mess up. Just my luck." He grimaced. By now, Kidomaru's corpse was but a bloody and fleshy goo in the form of a human, his liquefied innards spilling onto the ground around him by the second. "I should start. Once it dries up, it would be a bitch to clean." Ricky sighed and walked towards the closet where he knew were the necessary utensils for the job. As a guard whose patrol area was near laboratories, he was the poor sod who was usually given the task to clear the mess Lord Orochimaru made during his experiments. That's why Lord Orochimaru knew his name. Approaching Kidomaru with a broom, ready to sweep him off the floor, Ricky chuckled. "Funny, the Spider-Man got liquefied from the inside out. And here I thought it was supposed to be spiders who did that. Hehehe." With a chuckle, he put strength behind his sweep. Orochimaru, who was disgruntledly walking through the corridors of his hideout, deep in his thought, suddenly had to brace himself as a massive explosion shook the underground complex. He whipped his head towards where it came from and his eyes widened. "Fuck! My laboratory!" He inwardly screamed and started running in the direction from where he came from. He had everything there. His recent research result, his documents, his precious tools, his best DNA samples from various subjects and bloodlines. All of it. He reached the hall leading to his laboratory, only to discover it had turned into a massive hole in the ground, enabling him to see the sky as if it was mocking him. The priceless fruits of his months-long effort were vaporized. "Whoever is responsible for this, I will find you and skin you alive," Orochimaru seethed in rage. Unknown to Anko, her little gift did its job at Orochimaru baiting better than she expected. "Dead and captured? All except Tayuya and Guren who were captured are dead?" Orochimaru darkly asked, tightly gripping the armrest on his chair. It was already a week since Kidomaru's corpse exploded in his laboratory, and the scouts finally returned. Orochimaru was getting a little anxious when not one member of the Sound Four returned during the week. Well, now he knew why, mostly thanks to how chatty the people of Land of Waves apparently were about the happenings, and he was utterly pissed. Konoha was protecting Tazuna? Anko Mitarashi of all possible Konoha ninjas was a part of it? Orochimaru could almost imagine the rage of his former apprentice when she realized they were his grunts. Her expression when they activated the cursed seal must have been so hilarious. At least, Orochimaru found it hilarious and felt a sadistic pleasure at imagining that situation for a brief moment before his mind reminded him it was Anko's fault that his elite subordinates were killed and captured. "Kidomaru died of poison," Orochimaru suddenly realized. "Kakashi Hatake isn't all that proficient in poisons. The one responsible for decimating my laboratory should be Anko," he reasoned. "If I wasn't so pissed, I would be impressed." During the previous week, Orochimaru tried to find out what kind of poison was used. He couldn't really do any analysis, since any remains of the poison were vaporized alongside Kidomaru's body, but as an expert on poisons himself, Orochimaru had his theory. The only thing that could create such a blast with nothing but a dead body. It was obvious the poison used Kidomaru's chakra to make a bomb out of his body. How such a thing was possible, though. Now that stumped Orochimaru. Alas, he had bigger problems than the small fireworks in his laboratory. Kirigakure took the captured Guren and Tayuya. The second he got to know that, Orochimaru instantly flared his chakra, activating the self-destruct function of Tayuya's cursed seal. That should have immediately killed her, except he felt no response. My seal was countered? He freaked out, making his breath hitch. The cursed seal was his masterpiece. Jiraiya had his Sennin mode, Tsunade had her strength of 100 seal, and he had his cursed seal. It was his masterpiece and somebody managed to counter it? The cursed seal was not only a means to enhance his soldiers. Every piece of it contained a small part of his soul, from which he could be reborn in the unlikely case he died. The grunt-enhancing function was just a small bonus in Orochimaru's mind. Orochimaru hissed in anger, "No! My seal is impenetrable. Not even Jiraiya can do anything about its earliest stage that doesn't contain my soul. Tayuya must be already dead." He calmed himself and schooled his expression. "You say that Anko Mitarashi is now S-rank Kunoichi? Tsunade's apprentice?" He lifted his eyebrow. "She easily decimated my elites?" The scout who kneeled in front of Orochimaru slowly nodded, too scared to put it into words, lest Lord Orochimaru decided to relieve him of his head. "Good job, you can go," Orochimaru indifferently stated, and the scout vanished in a burst of speed, happy to be dismissed. "Anko Mitarashi, heh." Orochimaru shook his head in disbelief. He threw away the girl because she was frankly useless, a burden. Worse yet, a burden he felt an attachment to. Now that he heard how strong she became despite the cursed seal that limited her growth. Orochimaru was proud enough to even forget about how her actions almost ruined 3 years of planning and preparing. Almost. Does this mean we are abandoning the plan? Kimiro, one of the Kaguya clan survivors whom Orochimaru promised clan restoration and revenge in exchange for his services, suddenly asked, emerging from the shadows near Orochimaru's chair. "No, this just means I have to get creative." Orochimaru chuckled, his eyes dangerously narrowing as new plans and schemes were forming in his mind. A moment later, his expression eased and a small, sly smile appeared on his face. Heh, Anko-chan became so strong. Maybe throwing her away was a bad decision. Looks like we need more allies. And just like that, Orochimaru's plans for the Konoha invasion did 180. I guess I should be grateful. Without Anko so easily killing my elites, I would never realize the forces I amassed are not enough. Orochimaru chuckled. Konoha will rue the day they forced me to remake my plans.